So check it out, you guys. This video right here is going to be a little bit different, and this is going to be a short video. I'll be honest with you guys. I didn't really know how to come on here and approach this topic because my take on all this is not only a little jaded, but it's also a mixed bag. However, I still didn't want to come on here and say the wrong thing or have anything that I might say be taken out of context. So with that said, I'm going to do my best to take the high road and steer clear of all the drama that's out there on YouTube right now. There's a time and place for everything, but obviously this is not the time for it. And this is not what this video is about. Especially at a time like right now when people are still grieving and others are still trying to digest what happened over the course of this last week. So I'll start this out first by saying this. When I first decided to launch a YouTube channel and jump on social media, something that I vowed I'd never do while I was still incarcerated, it's definitely been an interesting experience to say the least. It's had its positives and it's definitely had its negatives. On one hand, it's given me an opportunity to meet some good people and afford some positive relationships with people that I never would have met had I not been on social media. Our worlds were just too far apart and we were just in two different places, which is okay because sometimes diversity can be a good thing. But on the flip side, I've also met and encountered other people who I didn't particularly care for and who weren't considered to be popular in my world for one reason or another, whether it was behind a difference of opinion, ego, arrogance, not seeing eye to eye, a fallout, or because I just simply didn't like an individual's get down or the persona that they were trying to portray on YouTube. I just can't get past fake people or those who just refuse to keep it real. And there's no shortage of reasons for this, and that's okay because I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people that felt the same way about me and who didn't care for me as a person either. But come on, let's keep it real. We're not always gonna like everybody that we encounter. That's just human nature. Sometimes we just don't like or click with certain people, and there's a lot of reasons for this. But let me just say this and get this part of the video out of the way before I move on to the rest of what I want to say. So despite the fact that there's a lot of people on YouTube and social media that I don't care for and would never be okay being in the same room with, death is something that I would never wish on nobody because there's no coming back from that. And even though there's been individuals that have made me dislike them behind their own actions or behind disagreements that we might have had, and I'm not just limiting this to YouTube, I'm talking about across the board, I still would never allow anybody to have that much of an impact on my character to where I would ever wish death on them. Not behind no petty shit. It might involve something pretty close that involves a lot of pain and suffering. I'm kidding, but hopefully you guys understand what it is that I'm trying to say. I mean, a lot of what happens on YouTube is just rhetoric by some loudmouth dudes who are selling wolf tickets and individuals that would never have that same energy if you ever ran across them face to face, so you take it with a grain of salt. But I'm still gonna stand on what I said. I'm not gonna wish death on some of these dudes that I've had petty conflicts with because they've disrespected me or because they called me out my name. You gotta get me a little bit more upset before I get to that point. But anyways, let me just tell you guys what happened last week so you understand what I'm trying to get at. So last Saturday, I got a text from one of my longtime subscribers who pretty much watches all the channels that people identify with being part of the prison genre. And he basically told me that Josh from the Homie Hangout had passed away. And at first, like everyone else, I didn't believe it. And I shot him a text back and I said, come on, bro, stop playing. Because you just don't expect something like this to happen. But after texting with him back and forth, it became obvious that he wasn't playing, that he was serious. So that same night, it was actually suggested to me that I put it out there, that I drop a video on it, that it was content, and that I take advantage of it before everyone else put it out there. However, for several reasons, I chose not to. Aside from the fact that I've never been one of those types of content creators that was willing to roll out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning with cornflakes in my eyes and be one of the first ones to drop exclusive, groundbreaking content, I just didn't feel like that was my lane. But not only that, I'll be honest with you guys, it also had a lot to do with the fact that it would have been a little weird for me to do that video based on the fact that me and Josh had our differences and that things weren't always positive between us. I'm not going to get into all that because for one, this isn't what this video is about, and for two, I want to respect his family's space because I know they're in a difficult place right now. It is what it is, but putting my personal feelings aside, I'll close this part of the video off by saying my condolences to his family and I hope he's resting in peace. And I know there's going to be people who are going to say, why would you extend your condolences to somebody who spoke ill of you on YouTube? But whether they understand it or not, sometimes it's not always about what other people do. Sometimes it's about doing what's right, and I'll just leave it at that. But anyways, I've seen several different videos about this on YouTube from different content creators talking about how this affected them, along with personal messages that they had for their viewers. And for the most part, it seemed like most of the content creators that talked about it got it right. But unfortunately, you guys already know, the goof troop is always putting out its unnecessary rhetoric and creating drama. Man, it never ceases to amaze me. These dudes just don't stop. You know, the sense of entitlement and the level of self-worth that these dudes feel about themselves is off the charts. I don't understand why these dudes feel like their opinions are always valued, or why they always have to be at the forefront of everybody else's business, but it's pretty pathetic. But anyways, let me get back on track. Like I said, there was a couple channels that got it right, and two that I can think of off the top of my head were Lucky from Cali Legends Media and Slugs from Slugtown. You know, shout out to both these guys for putting out classy videos and for not getting caught up in the bullshit that others put out there. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen their videos, but if you haven't, go to their channels and check them out. Subscribe, they put out good content. You know, I've watched some of Lucky's videos before in the past, and like I said, not only does he put out good content, but he's also been known to call cats out on their bullshit before in the past. So again, shout out to both of those guys for putting out classy videos. So moving on to the next part of this video and getting to the crux of what I really wanted to say. You know, again, this situation affected people different. You know, but for me, after watching some of these videos and after reading some of the comments from the viewers, you know, I'm not going to be fake with you guys and put an act on like I sat in a dark corner and couldn't eat for the last 2 days. But what it did do is it made me think about how some of the viewers see content creators and some of the things that the viewers don't see behind the faces of the content creators. So I just wanted to share a few of my thoughts with you guys and to kind of put things in perspective, not only as a content creator myself, but as somebody who's also a face on YouTube. You know, this ain't gonna be a long video, but there is several points that I do want to make. So I'll try to keep this short and concise. However, just bear with me because I do want to get this right. So the first thing I want to start out by saying is this. Whenever you guys jump on YouTube and you tap into some of the different channels that you like to watch, whatever channel that might be, as viewers, you basically get to know certain content creators, and in some respects, you forge somewhat of a connection with these guys. Sometimes that might even transcend to IG, where you begin exchanging DMs and personal messages. And yet, in some of the most extreme scenarios, you might even start communicating by phone and earn the right to be one of those viewers who likes to instigate and stir the pot. You know, the kind of viewer who will occasionally tap in and say, hey, such and such is on a live right now talking big shit about you, or such and such dropped a video about you last night and had your name all up in their mouth. And don't act like you guys don't know what I'm talking about either, because every content creator has 3 or 4 of these types of instigators. But my point is you guys get to know our personas, our personalities, our characteristics, and how we see things insofar as our personal opinions, our mentalities, and our personal views about a lot of different things. You know, some of you listen to us while you're at work to help you kill the time and get through your day. Others tap in during your commute, whether it's to or from work. And then there's those of you that just enjoy the content and listen to us while you're at home. At least for myself, I can personally attest to this since I've gotten to know a lot of my subscribers. I've definitely come to learn that it's a mixed bag and that there's people from all walks of life. But I think sometimes when some of you get wrapped up in the entertainment part of it and you get to know the persona of a particular content creator that you've made a connection with, that you guys sometimes forget that those of us that you see on YouTube are just normal people that have real lives of our own. Literally, there's a life behind every content creator's face that you see on YouTube. Every one of them. Some of us have wives. Some of us have significant others. Others have husbands. You know who you are. But there's a life that exists, and we're all just regular people with personal lives of our own. And that's what you guys don't see. You know, depending on the content creator and what they choose to divulge about themselves, you know, and there's some of us that might share some of this stuff with you guys, and this all becomes to be part of that persona, part of that character that you guys get to know. And I'm just talking about some of the minor details, like what kind of car you drive, whether or not you have a dog or a cat, if you have another line of employment outside of YouTube, whether or not you got kids, etc., etc. You know, I've shared some of this stuff with you guys myself. You guys know about Chewy and Gizmo. I've told you guys before that I have a truck, a Harley, and a drop top Cuddy. I told you guys that I work out in my garage and just things like that. But if I never would have decided to tell you, then chances are you guys probably never would have found out about it. And here's something else to keep in mind. When you guys get to know us as content creators, for the most part, the majority of us probably come across as being somewhat grounded, stable, and even if we're not in the best place in life, we at least appear to be in a good place. There's a perception by people that if you look a certain way and you act a certain way, that you're in a good place in life and that you're probably happy and content. But that's not always true. You never know what's going on behind closed doors, and things ain't always what they seem to be. Unless that is, you're someone who's known for being one of these J-cats who's always crashing out, who might be struggling with an addiction, or someone who's known to be unpredictable. But again, the point that I'm trying to make is that unless we tell you guys about some of our hardships, our struggles, our financial strains, or some of the other things that we might be going through, you guys would never have any idea that any of these things were ever going on. And as content creators, a lot of us are like chameleons. We do a good job at hiding it, and we never let the strain of these hardships show outwardly. So again, most of the time, you guys would never even know if we were ever in a dark place or if we were in the midst of dealing with some type of traumatic, life-altering event. Whether it's some type of medical condition, mental health concerns, domestic issues, financial problems, whatever it is, most of us know how to suppress these things and hide it so that you guys would never know nothing about it. All you guys see is new content, but there's literally no change in character or anything different about our demeanor that would ever lead you to believe that we're in a dark place. And obviously that's why when something like this happens, where all of a sudden somebody ends up losing their life, no matter how it happens, it comes across as being a shock or as a huge revelation. Because think about it, then you reflect back on the last video that you've seen and you say to yourself, such and such just put a video up. I just seen him the other day and it didn't seem like anything was wrong. It didn't seem like he was stressed out or he didn't look sick to me. So just keep in mind that you guys ain't always going to be able to see the signs or identify the red flags when somebody's dealing with this kind of stress or the strains that we all go through in life. You know, it's crazy, but since I've had this channel, this is like the 7th person that I've seen pass that I've had personal interactions with on YouTube. So of course there's now Josh, but before that there was Iron Bear, Sundown, Big Lou, Savage Studios, Smitty, and then there was Tiny Contreras, who I talked to on the phone about doing an interview. You know, it's made me not only realize how much time has passed, but that tomorrow's not promised for any of us, and that you could be here one minute and gone the next. So the next part of this video that I want to get into is the mental stress and some of the weight that comes along with being a content creator. You know, of course, everyone who's on YouTube who has a monetized channel is motivated by the financial gains, and they're in it to try to make a bag. Some of us might have ulterior motives and other reasons for doing it, but for the most part, they're trying to turn their channel into a viable source of income, which is understandable, especially considering the amount of time, effort, and work that goes into producing content. It's not as easy as some people might think it is. You know, when you have a successful channel and you're making good money from YouTube, it's definitely rewarding and your hard work will pay off. But for anyone who thinks being a content creator is easy, that is cakewalk, trust me, that's an illusion. You know, I can see how someone might assume this based on the fact that they probably say, well, how hard could it be to sit in front of a camera at home and make videos talking about the things that you want to talk about? And that's the illusion right there. I'm sure anybody could do that, but I'm talking about generating content that people are going to want to see and creating content that's going to hold people's interest. You know, trust me, being a content creator and maintaining a successful YouTube channel is not only an arduous undertaking, but it also comes with a lot of personal sacrifices. You know, I'm sure most content creators will tell you that creating good content is not only time consuming, but it's also mentally challenging and it takes a lot of hard work. I mean, think about it. In order to even record a video, you've got to be able to put yourself in a good place mentally and remain focused on what it is you're going to talk about. Then, depending on your channel and the emphasis you're trying to achieve, there's also the editing, the intros, the outros, the pictures and videos you might want to incorporate in your own video along with the thumbnail, the uploading, etc., etc. Then you also have to have the ability to come up with different topics and different types of content that will be able to hold the interest of your viewers. And trust me, that can be a challenge in itself because you can run out of ideas real fast. And again, to be consistent is time consuming. This is where you have to start making sacrifices, because in order to put out multiple videos or even a video daily, you have to be willing to put in the work and invest the time. And this is where you begin to run into problems, because if you got small kids, another form of employment, and your own personal social life, you got to be able to divide and distribute your time equally amongst them all. And this can be tough. You know, it can start cutting into your time for being a good parent. And if you have another form of employment, it can begin interfering with that. And it can also begin to have an adverse effect on your personal life. You know, and all these things can cause problems. And for some people, it can be stressful. And for those of us who are fortunate enough to have a stable living environment and who are somewhat grounded. We have the luxury of creating content in our man caves or in other areas of the house that we've converted into a makeshift YouTube studio. But I've talked to a lot of content creators that don't have that luxury and who basically have to lug all their equipment around with them when they create videos while they're on the move. These are all other small sacrifices that you have to make. But again, it's things like this that make being a content creator not only a challenge, but also burdensome. But I'm going to go ahead and keep this short like I said I would. I just wanted to share some of my thoughts with you guys and give you another angle to look at this all from. Also, just to give you guys a heads up, I'm going to be working on an Inner Demons next, and I'm going to be working on new content all week long. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Paradigm Profiles. If you guys liked this episode, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this episode, give it a thumbs down. But either way, drop a comment and let me know what you think. And again, something else that's important that I'm going to continue to keep reminding you guys about is to not only hit the like, drop a comment, and share the video, but also hit the all symbol on the notification bell so that you're advised whenever I drop content on the channel. So with that being said, as always, I just want to thank those of you who continue to show your unwavering support and for also continuing to tap into the channel. In the meantime, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Keep pushing that positivity. Until the next one, this is your boy B, and I'm gone.